They always say to us, young people are the leaders of tomorrow. And you know what they say about tomorrow? It never comes.
The MDC Alliance is targeted to register 6 million people. ZANU-PF is also targeting an ambitious number as the MDC Alliance, 5 million of votes ahead of the 2023 general elections. Now, a lot of people are going to participate in this election are going to be first-time voters, the young people. They've said that they're going to be deciding the destiny of this country. Now, we're going to be having discussion with the young people on their role in the election of 2023 here on the Free Talk, proudly brought to you in partnership with the Frederick Newman Foundation. Early before this interview took place, we sat down with the youth leader of the MDC, Yvonne Musarurwa, and had a conversation about what she thinks and understands as the role of the youth in this 2023 general election, the race to winning it. We also went to the street and we spoke to a number of Zimbabweans. We spoke about what they think about the youth vote in 2023. Now, the young people, first-time voters, AMA 2000, will be voting in this election. There are issues around the vote, the issue around registration of new voters, the issue around acquiring national identity documents for the young people. We are going to ventilate those issues here on the Free Talk with me, Dara Blessed Mtlanga, and my guest on this platform. Join me. One leader, Zimbabwean history respected leader, once said, the future of Zimbabwe is safe. In fact, he said that the future of Zimbabwe will be rescued by the young people. Just down in Zambia, where HH just won the election, the young people were the deciding factor. In South Africa, Julius Malema said that it is incumbent, it is a responsibility for the young people of Africa to decide their destiny and ensure that they lead the future of this continent. Now, most of the time, young people have been accused of being unfocused and of standing on the sideline while they watch the political field being infested and controlled by the older generations who have reached the afternoon of their lives. As we head into 2023, we want to assess, to look at what role will the young people of this country play? Are they equipped to do that? And will they be the deciding factor on how this country is going to be run? Now, hearing this, the Free Talk in partnership with the Frederick Newman Foundation, we are sitting down with young people to discuss. In studio, I'm joined by the MDC Alliance Youth Assembly spokesperson, who's going to be helping us understand this and see what their party is doing about the young people's vote. Thank you very much, Omberai, for joining us.
Thank you very much, I'm blessed for having me around.
Amazing. And I'm also joined by an academic and a political analyst, Richard Mawomva, who is also joining us to establish and understand this topic. Are the young people the deciding factor for the 2023 general elections? Now, Mawomva, as you meet with our viewers, what is your view on this aspect, especially given that Zimbabwean youths have been accused of watching in the sidelines while the old take the baton forward?
To import from your historical reference where you cite Joshua Nkomo speaking about the role of the youth within the political space, allow me to also make reference to the letter that Patrice Lumumba wrote to his wife before he was executed. And he clearly stated that the history of this continent will not be written from Belgium, will not be written from New York, nor will it be written from the headquarters of the United Nations. As if that is not enough, on the burial of Lookout Masuku, Father Zimbabwe reiterated the fact that the history of this country will be written by the young. In 2004, Professor Jonathan Moy, in his paper Shifting Generations of African Nationalism, actually prescribed the notion of millennials as the deciding factor of the political decision-making through the ballot. So when you look at all these, the consensus from the politicians and from the academics, there is an inherent effect that the youth have always been and shall always decide the dynamics of power through the ballot.
I want to come to you, Ombele. In the greater scheme of things, where do the young people stand? Because if you look at most of the positions in parliament, the top position in political parties across the divide are being held by the older people. Now, what is the role of young people?
I think the role of the young people is not being espoused as much given the current situation. If you look at all the political parties, like you've said, the top positions are occupied by the older generation because there was lack of participation by the younger people. So in line of that, we have taken charge as young people to say, let's go and occupy the spaces. Let's go and be part and parcel of deciding our future. So the notion which seeks to say that we are leaders of tomorrow has been relegated to the periphery. That's why in the MDC Alliance, prior to the previous election, we actually said we are going to have 20% plus of the total candidates being young people. So we made it a point, and we had wards as well as constituencies that were specifically meant for young people, so that they will be in parliament, they also participate in local governance. But also, we still have an issue in terms of the young people not taking charge as much as we would want them. You see, when people, there's contestation in terms of the standing committee or the top 10 positions, you find all the young people are jostling for positions in the youth assembly and respective constituencies, but they're also not being able to go up there. So we need to push each other and have a support structure that will make sure that every young person has got a vision, envisages themselves as part and parcel of the top leadership, so that when we decide for everyone who occupies the greater chunk of the demographic dividend, which is the young people, we'll be able to ensure that the decisions and the policies are youth-friendly.
But you talk about getting 20%, it's like you're being given, you're having a donation to say this is the 20% for the youth, this is what we are giving the youth. Aren't you, the young people, the majority? Why do you need to survive on benevolence?
Let me tend to say this. The situation was that we were starting to push each other to say, let's occupy spaces. So we had to start from somewhere. And it was at least 20%. So it means there was no ceiling to the 20%. We actually had other young people contesting in constituencies or wards that were specifically said, this, we would call them gango. So everyone goes in there, a woman is there, someone who's coming from the Wayne Main is there, also a young person is also able to contest. But these 20% seats were specifically meant for someone who is a young person. No one else was allowed to be in that seat. So it's 20% plus going forward. So if you manage to push, and we know that by the commencement of any process, we're going to be having 20% youth people occupying spaces. Then beyond that 20%, we push, we can even reach anything 80%. It's possible, but we at least have a baseline of 20%.
Richard, does that make sense to you?
The thing is that whilst all MDCs are young political parties, that is in terms of their factional architecture, they are young political parties. But the truth of the matter is that with the senior political parties, that is your liberation movements, you will notice a situation whereby you have got clusters of the main wings, the youth, and then the women, and in some quarters you've got the war veterans. So to me, that speaks to the manipulation of political demographies to pursue political ends. So we are living in a time where it sounds fashionable to say you want to appeal to the youth, where it sounds fashionable to say you want to appeal to women, and in some instances where you begin to raise discourses of veterans. Whilst we think that this is the issue of veterans is only linked to liberation movements, we have a situation whereby even in the opposition parties, young as they are, they have their own veterans. So what point am I making? You have got these pockets of influence, the youth, who set even the political agenda or notions of the day, the women, and you'd notice that whenever expediency issues are put across the board within liberation movements and these, amateur or new opposition parties, there is always the use of youth and women. So, which brings me to a broader perspective that says, are we not playing to the agenda setting of bigger political ambitions where veterans across the divide say it's about youth, and yet the youth only become a tool for mobilizing for elections, and at the end of the day, it is the elite, it is the veterans of the political divides. So I think we also need to interrogate those who are generating this discourse and say, is it a discourse by the youth, or it is a discourse by supra structures of political power across the divide?
So are the youth woke enough to interrogate this aspect and begin to take up those spaces and talk about the discourse that you bring up? Is it about the youth, or it is with the youth?
I think we need to come to a point of consciousness, a heightened sense of political consciousness that says, why do we go to elections? We go to elections to drive policies that eradicate poverty. We go to elections to drive policies that talk of inclusion in itself. We go into elections to drive policies that create jobs, that create viable health systems. And in the process, we need to interrogate the fact that if the youth are the future, how do they fit into these pockets of national development aspects? And if we are not asking ourselves those questions in mapping the future of Zimbabwe and the future of the continent, then we may actually have a situation whereby we play into agenda settings that are not sustainable for the future of Africa, which is epitomized by the youth.
Now, ZANU-PF has seen, from my looking outside, it has seen that the youth would probably decide 2023, and they have been engaging the youth through the use of influencers and social media influencers and engaging them to win their backing in the 2023 election. Now, is this trivializing the youth, or is this taking them seriously?
As far as I know, with the legal knowledge that I have and what is in the public domain, I don't think that ZANU-PF has come out and said we are deploying a policy of using the so-called influencers to influence the youth. Because the problem that we then get out of that simplistic analysis of issues is that we think that the youth are a linear group who are influenced by a bunch of these celebrities. We have got some of these views, some which may not be even philosophically appealing to intellectuals. So to assume that a youth are a linear group who are appeased by people probably because they are celebrities and all of that, it is a simplistic notion. But also to argue that ZANU-PF is using that as a strategy is something that is predicated on assumptions and not a fact, because ZANU-PF has not pronounced that as a position that it has taken. For instance, you have political parties inviting certain people that they think probably you have got a following. That does not mean that they think that can generate votes for them. So until and unless ZANU-PF says it is their policy position, then we can interrogate it from that perspective.
From where you stand, what is your political party doing to ensure that it brings in the youth to become as woke and understanding of these issues as you have been saying?
My brother mentioned the three tier in terms of the structures of the political parties, where there is the Women Assembly, the Youth Assembly, and the main board. In our party, the duty of the Youth Assembly, as enshrined in Article 8, clearly stipulates about mobilization of the young people. So now the onus lies on the young people that are leading in terms of...
But you're the young people and you're leading. So tell us what you're doing.
So what we are doing as young people is we have put ourselves in place to have a mobilization too. And as the Youth Assembly, in 2020 we launched what we called the 1 million campaign. The 1 million campaign was hinged on having 1 million voices for change, not 1 million young people. It was the voices. So as you echo, those voices will be able to reach as many people as possible. But that is a pragmatic figure in which we divided amongst the 10 provinces to say, Harare province, you're supposed to mobilize these people as mobilizers for young people so that they understand and comprehend what is it that is needed in the young person to participate in the broader politics so that we are able to attain the objectives that will ensure that a young person is involved within developmental politics. So that is our base of mobilization. And this is outside the structures that we already have within the MDC, to say we have a district executive, we have a branch executive that is sitting. Outside that, we are mobilizing these 1 million people, and we have made strides in terms of that. Outside that also, we are having policy conferences that we are also having. We've been having them mostly because of the COVID. We've been having them on Zoom, we've been having them on WhatsApp, where we are trying to inculcate the culture of understanding what really is politics and why should the young person be in the forefront of deciding, against the background of appealing to each and every sphere of influence where the young people are found. Because we have different stratas of young people. We have Mawindi, we have Makorokoza, we have the middle class, and we have also the Mbingas. We should be able to appeal to each and every one of that, giving them the democratic alternative to say this is where this country is heading and this is where we want it to.
Now you talk of these young people who from looking outside are being empowered by ZANU-PF. Some of them are being given land with their farmers. Some, as you mentioned, Amakorokoza, who are mining in that sense. And what alternative are you showing them?
In regard to issues to do with economic emancipation of young people, we have secretaries that are working in that regard at provincial level, at national level. And we have been having programs of going down to those people. So we have party projects, and party projects looks for funds, and then those funds are given to the young people that within our reach. So our mobilization matrix is hinged on being able to also fund young people that are operating there. ZANU-PF is a way of going, perhaps it gives people a claim. Then you have those young people working there. But some of them, and in fact most of them, will not be having equipment. So we've been trying by all means to say that we go and have, the sponsor system in terms of those mining systems. You go there, silently you operate because of victimization, and there's so much patronage in terms of those issues. So because of the victimization that happens in that strata, we go there silently and ensure that there are young people that are also mining, and also aligned to us.
I'm failing to understand where, because they've been given a claim by ZANU-PF, and obviously you admit that, and you are giving them equipment. So where do they get their alignment here? I'm not touching it.
So in the broader Zimbabwean politics, you understand that political affiliation has got repercussions in terms of your access to economic benefits. So that situation is reality. So you must be able to marry the two. What you intend to get and the reality on the ground. Your inability to marry these two, you are going to have a crisis whereby you are not able to tap into the person that you want to appeal to. So that's where we're saying, in areas that are not of your monopoly, or areas that are not of your autonomy, should be able to find the best ways on how then you can engage those people without having victimization. Because the worst thing you can ever do to yourself is trying to go to someone who has benefited something from someone, and then you tell them, I'm going to give you something that you do not have. But you look at this current status quo and say, what is it that I can do in order to emancipate this person to achieve the best and the greatest yield from what they are doing? So that is the modus operandi of trying to engage whoever is within a situation, maybe they've benefited or not. So you push from a certain perspective so that you are able to understand, because we are dealing with the realities here. The moment we negate that and we are not understanding what is happening, we are bound to have a prescription that does not go to the core of the problem.
Richard, do we believe in the young people in this country?
What I seem to be getting, to respond to your question based on the previous submission, is that one political party, due to its patronage masculinity, its massive patronage masculinity, gives maybe 30-40% of youth in a particular province resources or access to resources. And then a political party that does not even have a building where it operates from, comes in and probably claims to buy machinery. Let's say that is true, buys machinery and it assists these youths. At the end of the day, before the public eye, the exalted political party is that one which does not go nicodemously and exerts its influence. At the end of the day, if it then sells its development agenda, it then just uses those projects for that particular purpose. So, basing on that analogy and this submission, I think politicians or political parties sometimes, to pursue certain executive interests, will always use the gullible side of our citizenry to appeal to the superstructure interests. So at the end of the day, we need to think beyond a situation whereby we give women some projects so that we capture their affinity to our interests, or we look at our veterans and do the same with them. But what we need to do is to sell ideas that speak to perennial national interests And what are those perennial national interests? The idea of preserving national sovereignty and ensuring that external colonial influence does not penetrate into our political space, ensuring that, number two, there is democracy and that it is a type of democracy decided by our own indigenous aspirations and not by what FDI wants and not by what New York and London want. We also need to create systems of equality that cause the youth to call upon their executive political structures to say, this is what we want. This is the future that we want. And if you are not going to do these good things for the good of the country, we are able to pull you down from power, because the youth are the base, the women are the base, and they can decide to collapse the apex of the power structure in any given political setup. So the youth and the women should realize the power and the force that they are, but predicated on perennial national interests and ideologies.
But are they taken seriously? No, you didn't address that aspect. Are they taken seriously? Because I watched Eddie Cross in conversation with Trevor saying that one of the major reasons he didn't support Nelson Chamisa, he said, he's just still young.
Well, with regards to Nelson Chamisa, I'll come back to the question. With regards to Nelson Chamisa, that is a fact in the sense that youthfulness sometimes can never beat experience. And experience comes with benefits of incumbency. So one of the challenges that come with the youthfulness of the opposition political power is the lack of experience to engage with the ingredients of acquiring power. So that is one thing. And then now let's come to the intra-party perspective. Like I said, you have a situation whereby youths are just tools of attaining certain political goals. And this is because of an absent and clearly defined ideology on what it means to be youth and in preserving national interests. Because, tell you what, the nationalist movement was born out of a youth who were conscious of what they wanted, and they achieved what they wanted against the colonial regime. But if you ask our youth today in MDC and even in ZANU-PF and say, what do you expect from your leaders? In many instances, it is sycophantic flattery that probably Chamisa chete or Monzora this and all of that. So we need to move beyond the politics of sycophancy. We need to move beyond the politics of paying hypocritical tithes of loyalty to politicians and pay more tithes of loyalty to national interests and the perennial national questions as youth.
And the question?
Liberating.
Are they taken seriously?
They need to be taken seriously.
But are they?
They need to be taken seriously.
Ombera, you are paying a loyalty ticket as young people. You have no substance.
I think maybe he is speaking from a black market narrative to say that people are playing a loyalty ticket. In every institution, there is a leader. And recognition of a leader does not imply that people are playing a loyalty ticket. That's why you find out there's always contestation in terms whenever there's a congress and everything. People have to choose leadership in terms of that structure. So to say that people are playing a loyalty ticket, I wouldn't agree with them. Not today, not tomorrow, not even ever. And it's across the political divide. It's across Africa, it's across the world. Whenever there is that issue to do with anything elective, you have people being mentioned. And you have, and that was a mantra which was being used prior to the Congress. And if you come back into MDC now, you see the CCC is now Citizens Convergence for Change, not the Chamisa Chete mantra. So people will choose what they want to speak about to suit their narratives at a certain a platform. But as we speak today, that is our Agenda 2021. Where we are saying all the citizens must converge, like what happened in Zambia. There's a convergence of citizens from all walks of life so that we have effective change to win Zimbabwe for change. That is what was being exposed in our previous, this weekend.
But is it not fair to say you have converted Chamisa Chete to try and make it citizen convergence for change, but you are basically paying homage and you are worshipping an individual at a certain level?
No, that's not it. People sit down together. Because the agenda is not coming from Chamisa, it's coming from the National Executive, the National Council, the highest decision-making board in between Congress. So these people sit
But
down
what
together.
kind of a leader would you be if you can't set an agenda for your political party?
What I'm saying here is, Chamisa being part and parcel of that executive, he sits down with everyone because the democratic institution, these are the ideas. What are we supposed to be confronting as a people? This is our agenda. What are the key issues are we going to be dealing with? People's livelihoods, security of individuals, the fight against corruption, constitutionalism and the constitution. You focus on those things in terms of how we are going to be confronting the situation that we do have, and it comes up as a citizens' convergence for change. These are the key issues that we want to change. So I'm saying, when we had a Congress, that's when people were saying Chamisa, Chete, as a rhetoric mantra. And within that spectrum, as you go in politics, you understand today there is someone who strongly believes in Chamisa in the MDC. You have that person saying Chamisa, Chete. But what is the triple C that we are putting out as the MDC alliance? We are saying citizens' convergence for change. And the narrative is 2023 is not going to be MDC alliance against ZANU-PF. It's the citizens of Zimbabwe against ZANU-PF because of the ground, the foundation that we have set to say this is what we want to attain with everyone on board. And that is our ground now for engagement. Now we have a alliance building being spearheaded from all the wings. The women are going in their direction to converge with other women that are not political. The young people, we are going in our direction, converging with students, we are converging with minors, we are converging with TAUs, we are converging with everyone within the broader lines of the young people. And the main wing is going there, meeting capital elites, meeting political elites, meeting all the relevant people, the churches, so that we have a convergence of everyone on the agenda to win Zimbabwe for change.
But in the MDC, like Mahomba raised, as young as you are, you're already practicing politics of entitlement, where even as you have split, there are some sections of your political party who are saying, these ones were not there when we formed this thing is ours. We are the veterans who came from the trade unions. And Eddie Cross clearly says that he could not support the leadership of Nelson Chamisa because, in his words, he's too young. Now, this is from within yourself. Do you think your political party takes young people seriously?
Yes, I do think it takes young people seriously. And then, to answer the issue that you have just mentioned, we have two issues here at play. Number one, that has been the challenge in Zimbabwe, the issue of historical revisionism. And I'm very happy that the two of you, in your opening remarks, you had to mention some history, and you understand these things. So the issue of historical revisionism is a challenge for the generations of today and the future generations. Certain things need to be made straight so that people understand, because people have a tendency of lying about the things that they did. It's like you're sitting in your rural hut and your security is saying, I used to play soccer with George Shire. I think those are the things that do happen also in political parties for political expedience. So when those discourses come, it's not like someone is using them to say that they want to put themselves elsewhere. But sometimes it's people trying to demystify the lies that are trying to be propagated from certain corners. Not to say that people are jostling for being there in the birth of the part. No, it's about dealing away with historical revisionism. Then the other issue that we get that comes to say someone will then say, I cannot join Chamisa. You see, we have a generation that was there and they were elders within the political party. Just like in terms of our executive as young people. There are people that feel that we were too young to take power. You don't find people of our age perhaps getting positions within other political parties. But in the MDC, you had young people taking
Which other
charge.
political party?
Like in ZANU-PF, you have the secretary for youth, a very old person. So those issues now, who will speak to you to say, that person, there is no space for young people, because you find someone who's sitting in the Politburo representing the youth might be 56 years. And that is a challenge when saying youth are 35 and below. So you have, like where I was mentioning now, within our part, we're having issues to say the other guys that were before us, we're saying these guys cannot lead us because they are very young. But then as we start to move and we start to deliver in terms, you said people start to get on board. Then there's the issue of generational jealousy. There are people that are jealous of where the young people are attaining and achieving. And those people will always not be in the agenda to transform or to attain anything. They say, blessed, I was with blessed. How can blessed be leading me? Then that person becomes abrasive, that person becomes restrictive, that person becomes someone who gives resistance to anything that you want to do. But because they were with you in the trenches before, they will say things as if they are substantive in nature to try and obliterate your image in terms of you attaining. So that issue of jealousy is a serious issue. That's why you find that person, if you ask them for an alternative, they'll be speaking about themselves. Because they feel you could have not taken that position had it been themselves. So it's an issue of generational jealousy, which is amongst the young people. So in order for us to be taken seriously beyond what is happening today, by every other young person there who's outside of the political spectrum, we need to have a convergence as young people to say, what is it that we want to attain? What is it that we want to achieve as a collective? We cannot mobilize towards development by exclusion. That should sink in everyone. So we need to have inclusion of every right-thinking Zimbabwe in the broader political matrix. We have MDC here, we have ZANU-PF here, we have ANC, we have APA, we have everyone. We converge together. We say, let's focus on developmental issues that will take Zimbabwe from its current situation as a unit. That convergence, if everyone comes on board, you find MDC youth are going out there, they're saying we should have an increase of salaries of teachers. Then you have someone from ZANU-PF saying you cannot go and demonstrate for such issues. You see, there is no convergence, but this issue is affecting a teacher both in ZANU-PF and also in the MDC. So that convergence needs to start interpart so that we come together and say these issues are logical. Any logical thinking, right-sitting young person must be able to come on board to confront these issues and then be on board to win Zimbabwe for change.
Mahumba, you say in your submission you spoke about experience and advantage of experience and incumbency. But someone would argue that if you have 7 years experience of doing the wrong thing, you have 7 years experience of doing the wrong thing, and therefore there's no advantage.
Okay, maybe to base on your level of analysis and use the borrow your discourse of doing bad things, and then out wrong or be a wrong things or bad things or evil things, just to also extend to your discourse and say, but let's go back to politics 101. What is politics? Politics is who gets what, when, and how. What is definition number 2? It is the capture of power, consolidating it, and crushing opposition. And if we were to look at politics from that spectrum and not governance, it means that ZANU-PF has done well. It means ANC has done well. Therefore, it means that the analogy of experience over youthfulness comes in a more applicable manner. So, what am I saying? Young political parties, the MDC in its all factional outlooks, should then look at some of the sustainable strategies of engaging ZANU-PF or EFF, looking at some of the strategies to engage ANC from a perspective of operational compatibility. Because you cannot have a situation whereby you think that a war of political power capture can be won through social media hashtags. Because hashtags come and go, but issues which are politically infrastructural are perennial, and they are fought through, conventional methods. which transcend the rhetoric of how far Zimbabwean lives matter. Of course they matter, hence ZANU-PF's competition for that, hence Mondora's competition around that aspect.
But I'm looking at in the aspect of defining national growth and development, apart from retention of political power, to say that the experience, does it matter if it keeps our education sector destroyed? Does it matter if it keeps the majority of the population poor? Does it matter?
One person would also ask, does this experience matter if it continuously barricades the neo-colonial influence of the Americans and the British who are angry about our land? Then someone might say, yes, it matters. So it depends from what perspective that you want to look at. And as if that is not enough, it is not entirely true to argue that this experience has only led to the hemorrhaging of the health sector, the hemorrhaging of the education sector, because as it stands, we have seen certain policies being implemented to rejuvenate all these sectors, because at the end of the day, there is no government that exists in the seat of public administration to administer failure. However, there are structural challenges that then manifest, and we need to look at all ruling parties in that respect, and then have oppositional alternatives that are predicated on the national question. And this is where the aspect of the youth come in to say, how do youth across the political divide converge for that particular structural transformation so that political parties deliver, even at local governance level, because at times we look at the macro and forget that we have a bin that is supposed to be picked up. You have got sewer that needs to be fixed, and the local council, which may be probably an opposition one, is not doing that.
Do you agree that this experience has served this country well?
No, this country has been suffering at the hands of ZANU-PF. It has been an hegemonical system which has been institutionalized from the time they chose to not stand with the people. Previously, ZANU-PF had a Gutsarushinji approach, and it was happening in that way. But when it started to create a political enclave, it had political elite, it had a certain secluded group of people that then becomes beneficiaries of the national cake. That is when ZANU-PF lost it, and everything started to derail. The health sector it took a nosedive. Education sector, you cannot name it. The jobs, everything went down, and that is what they have in terms of their experience. So no one can beat ZANU-PF in terms of the experience of killing this economy. It's a rotten economy because of the end of ZANU-PF. They have inconsistencies in terms of policies. They have policies that at any juncture, you look at the indigenization policy when it was implemented with the 51-49% percentages in terms of the ratio of ownership. That was a huge blow in terms of the development of this country. You had a huge exodus of companies from Zimbabwe. Even our very own Zimbabwean learned people left this country because there was no way for them to work. If you look at it today, ZANU-PF children do not even want to stay in Zimbabwe, a country that is run by their own parents. They are running away from it because of the situation that they are facing. Before this COVID came, when there were no restrictions of people flying outside of Zimbabwe, everyone was flying outside of Zimbabwe to get a better health treatment. It's because of the current status quo in terms of what is there. ZANU-PF has failed, and all it does, it speaks to things that it seeks to achieve, but it doesn't have the capacity to do that. It has failed for the past 42 years. ZANU-PF has failed to deliver, and ZANU-PF is also in the direction to fail. Why do I say so? You look at what they are trying to do. They're trying to window dress certain issues to say we have delivered here, we have delivered here. But in the broader sense, you look at what is it that is being earned by person, the GDP per capita. What is it that is being done in terms of this sector, in terms of production? What is it that is happening in mining? Where are the minerals going? Where is the money going? the fiscal allocation in terms of the national budget. Where is that money going? What happens to companies? The foreign currency returns from the Reserve Bank. Who gets that money? The schemes in terms of the corruption, in terms of road construction, the corruption in terms of energy deals, the mega deals that are written in newspapers, but they do not surface in terms we're going to employ 500,000 people. That doesn't happen. All those things are just lies. But the window dress they have and over control of in terms of the media, that is what they are doing good in terms of trying to portray themselves as someone who's delivering. But in terms of the actual things that are tangible on the ground, you won't find anything that is meaningful. That's why you see now the young people are no longer gullible. The young people know what they want. But in terms of them going to access just the voter registration, you find there are hiccups. The offices, 2 offices in Harare have closed. We only have 1 office that is functional. When the voter registration drive started, they understand what it means when young people go to participate in electoral processes. And they understand why those young people are going there. Because the young people have seen and they have lived through a history of finishing your school at MSU and you become a vendor. You finish whatever degree program you are doing and you cannot be employed. Someone who is actually not astute enough to be in education must also be having an enabling environment, equal opportunities for all in terms of the broader national cake. But you find those opportunities are not there.
But Richard, do you think that there is going to be a point where this country is going to be run on the now instead of on the past, in the past, instead of people who claim leadership and power through the liberation struggle?
Look, every policy making, the present is made even out of the old. But it is not enough to constantly make reference to the past in order to address issues that relate to the present. And there is this mistake of thinking that ZANU-PF runs or the country on the basis of its old legitimacy. Because if that was the case, then you would have a situation whereby they would not be implementing immediate policy issues, but also to come back to some important issues that were raised. I think we tend to have a challenge as the people of Zimbabwe of having an adversarial predisposition to the analysis of our challenges. And it reminds me of Frantz Fanon. Back to your media theories. He speaks of the pitfalls of national consciousness. And this is something that is across the board within the African continent. So at the end of the day, we need to move away from that adversarial point of looking at power dynamics and say, where are our pitfalls as a people of Zimbabwe? Because whilst we want to even argue about the issues of corruption and confine them to ZANU-PF, you have got the same issues of corruption in NGOs, you have got the same issues of corruption in the private sector. Those are the pitfalls of national consciousness. And pitfalls of national consciousness which are not partisan but are cross-cutting. So what do we need to do? We need to have an established ideological point as Zimbabweans, as Zimbabwean youth, to transcend the narrow partisan perspectives that create this adversarial point of our coexistence as a people. So we need to go to the drawing board and do away with the pitfalls of national consciousness.
I want to bring you back to the issue that you said. So the Jinawashe and army at that particular time said that they would not salute anyone who had no liberation war credentials. Just recently, Patrick Chinamasa said that there was an umbilical cord that cannot be cut between ZANU-PF and the army because of their liberation war struggle credentials. And every time ad nuncia, we have been told as Zimbabweans, because they took it from white colonial regime. Now, I mean, this shows you where people purport to be drawing their right to govern this country, doesn't it?
Not only that, you also made a huge omission in your analogy, and I'll take you back to history and quickly come to the contemporary. In 1976, Robert Mugabe said, our votes will go with our guns. And in a later stage, he then argued that politics must lead the gun and not the gun leading politics. So, when we talk of the struggle and link it to ZANU-PF, we are confined to a narrow perspective that says the people in ZANU-PF think that they went to war, and because they went to war, they have a monopoly over it. No, I'm just giving a generic view. But we forget that the struggle was a manifestation of a relationship between the gun and the civilians. And in 2017, we saw the remanifestation of that relationship through Operation Restore Legacy, which managed to erode the narrow perspective which had existed for over 2 decades, which was saying Mugabe must go. After Mugabe went, the very same people that were saying Mugabe must go, after their liaison with the army, they did not have an alternative. And what emerged was the ultimate supremacy of what the gun wanted, and with the support of the masses. So the relationship of the gun and the civilians, the relationship of the gun and politics is not institutionally confined to ZANU-PF, but it is broadly linked to the people of Zimbabwe and not necessarily ZANU-PF.
But let us look at this, Richard, as you want to put it. Now, how do you get a relationship with the gun when you have never shared the trenches with those who are in charge of the gun, who have the keys to the armor? Because most of your generals are people who were in the trenches with the current leadership. How do you, Richard, as a young person, no history of Mgagao, absolutely none, never shared the trench with the Philip Valerius Banda? How do you have that relationship?
The relationship that I have, the relationship that you have, the relationship that he has, is the positive lessons and the virtues that the gun produced. The gun produced the value of democracy. It's a value that me and you share. The gun produced the need for equality. It's a value that me and you share. The gun produced the idea of breaking racism. It's an idea that we share. So we need to think beyond the limited perspectives of the patronage of the gun and align ourselves to the broad-based values of the gun. The gun spoke about land, and that means me, you, your child, and your children must have the land, because that is what the gun fought for and won. So it's something that should benefit every Zimbabwean. So every Zimbabwean is an appendage of the gun, including our aspirations in all our cross-cutting partisan perspectives.
Do you believe that you have a relationship with the gun and that the gun speaks to those values that Richard has just put forward?
I would say my brother Richard had to say this because of his beliefs. But in terms of what the gun has done to the people of Zimbabwe, it has been on the forefront of perpetrating violence. It has been used in a partisan manner. If someone goes using a gun in Marsh East today at Mtoko Center, anyone wearing a red t-shirt, even a Man United jersey, will be running away because of the violence that came from the gun towards the citizens. And the
tanks? And the tanks in Harare, they remind someone of 2017? Which they partook in.
The tank were followed by people running away also. It just did not happen that the tanks came into the streets and everyone was on board. There were people that ran away, Zimbabweans, for crying out loud. And there were people that died during the operation. Selfies. So we must understand when the gun was being used, how was it being used in terms of the broader politics of Zimbabwe, of inclusivity? Because you focused on the ethos that everyone believes in. Everyone wants equality, everyone wants peace. But what of the issues that were being done by the very same gun? The issues that the very same gun does or did in January when the few riots happened. We had over 50 women that were raped by people with the gun. We had that Dongfeng running around in the ghettos and people would run scared. People, our own activists from the MDC, because they've been profiled where they stay. Myself, I did not stay home for 3 months, running away from the gun.
But here you are.
By virtue of just being aligned with the opposition. So it's the very same gun that you want us to then come here and say we ululated the gun, we say the gun is right. The gun with the declarations that came with it, even if you listen to the commandments that were given during the Operation Stoligas, there was an alludement to the issue of the Mugabe declaration and the command element being in control and dictating what then happens in terms of the broader politics of Zimbabwe. The gun there was just setting the tone to say that ZANU-PF comes and take charge. And that is what happened. The people of Zimbabwe feel betrayed by the gun. But there has to be a nexus between the gun and the people of Zimbabwe. The gun must not be involved in the politics of the gun. ZANU-PF is not the state. So the gun must not equate ZANU-PF as the state. Enemies of ZANU-PF are not enemies of the state. They are enemies of the thing, of the animal, the elephant in the room that has caused Zimbabwe to be where it is today. It did not been for that ZANU-PF, I tell you. That's why there's always a matter that ZANU-PF must go. The system, not the individuals. ZANU-PF must go, the whole system. We need an overhaul. We need new leadership. We need a democratic alternative where the gun is not involved in politics. The 3 tiers of government are operating without any capture. The judiciary is not captured. You have the parliament not issuing fictitious and some diabolic recalls that cripple in terms of the legislative deliveries. You have the very same institutions of government giving credence to the issues to say people are being recalled from local government due alluding to with regards to bin collection. How many councillors have been recalled? Is Zimbabwe the only country that is being affected by COVID to the extent that they cannot have by-elections, so that those people go into office and they become accountable to lack of service delivered? You have over 70% of councillors being recalled, and they are out there. These institutions are being given instructions by people hiding behind the gun. And those very same instructions are implemented at the dot because people are scared of the gun. This is a country where people cannot speak freely in the presence of a soldier. Anyone who comes wearing that camouflage full gear with those boots and they meet the people of Zimbabwe,
like yourself, you are wearing a camouflage cap.
I'm a revolutionary card.
But I'm speaking
I'm a revolutionary
to you.
card. I'm a revolutionary card. Some of us are not afraid. That's why we are able to confront ZANU-PF in all spectrums. I think you understand and you know some of us have been beaten. We have been in hospital at the hands of ZANU-PF. Almost died at the hands of ZANU-PF. But we continue to say enough is enough. Because we need to deliver the people of Zimbabwe from the gun, from politics of the gun, where the bullet is relegated to the periphery. But it's then shelved for things that need the bullet. If you hear that the Matsangas want to come through Mozambique, that's where the gun should be working. Not that ATUS is demonstrating so that teachers have a decent salary. Then you implement the gun. Not that you hear that students are crying out loud in MSU that we are not having our lectures. Then you use the gun. Not that women are saying there is too much domestic violence. You use the gun. Where young people are saying we need jobs, you use the gun. That is not the modus operandi that we want. The principle of universal suffrage that was brought about by the gun in 1908 must be respected, and the will of people must not be taken away by the gun. That has been the situation, and people know that history. We cannot revise it, and it sinks deep in the young people and everyone also who's old, who lived through the issue of the gun being used against the citizens. So if you want to bring the gun and say we're friends of the gun, today, no. But the young people, as young people, what we seek is to get the gun being there. Yes, we respect the army, we respect those people that are in the security forces, but they must not be involved in the politics of the day, just like what happened in Zambia. We need smooth transition of power whenever power is taken, not the 2008 situation, whereby there was unleashing of the army on the citizens. Many people died. I actually lost my uncle. If you look at the city, the victims, you look at the number 127. So these are the issues that we have been subject to, a history of violence being perpetrated by state institutions. That must be dealt with. It must stop as we go into plebiscite. That's why we are mobilizing the young people to be part and parcel of the deciders of the vote on 2023. But what does that mean? It means if there is voter apathy or a lack of participation by young people, they've decided that the gun must stay. If the young people go and participate, they'll decide otherwise. And you know what otherwise means. Like in Nyasaland, Malawi, Zambia, Zimbabwe. Chakwera, Chamisa. Thank you.
I want us to look at the aspect in terms of the power of the vote. Does it work in this country? And can the young people's vote, whichever way they vote, be the deciding factor?
Interesting question, but also to respond to a very emotive position raised about the gun. It is interesting that there is an adversarial acknowledgement of the influence of the gun, and those acknowledging the influence of the gun at that level think that it is romanticism and speeches that will make the gun to fall. Only time will tell. Number two, I would wonder if that particular political party also acquires power when it feels that its sense of security and hegemony is threatened. It will not use the gun. Let history of the future tell itself when that political party acquires power. Now, coming back to the vote, coming to the issue of the vote, I think if voting was not a very useful process, we would not be worrying ourselves about it. Yes, issues of electoral fraud have been raised. You cannot refute that. But you continuously see political parties who raise issues of electoral fraud going into the elections. So it means that the ballot has got a certain sense of hope for policy development, for policy transformation, and within a minority section of our people, the vote still has a hope for regime change. So there is this hope that the vote will at some point change the fortunes of our people. But for me, I do not see the use of the vote becoming more relevant if it is about removing X and substituting X with Y. But for me, the vote should be a tool that enables me to have a surety for food, to have a surety for water, to have a surety for access to good health, access to good education. So we need to then re-emphasize the function of the vote beyond, putting a political party or a representative of a particular political party into public office. But the vote must be accompanied by national aspirations. So the vote is useful. It shall be forever useful in deciding the terms and the tenets of the social contract.
Mm. But in your submissions, you seem to have contradicted yourself, because initially you said that I don't know if they are going to make the gun lose. Now, I want you some clarity on that aspect. Now, in the end of your submission, you say that the vote is useful.
A quick one. I'll just also give you an internal analogy within ZANU-PF. You had a group that was very vocal, that had these eloquent speeches, even through Grace Mugabe and all of that. And then, boom, November 15, the other group came with tanks. What I'm saying is that if ever anyone wants to stand against ZANU-PF, they must stand against ZANU-PF with equal infrastructure, big words, big romanticisms, big hashtags, and absence of infrastructure cannot translate to that probably aspired political wish. So you want to engage violence, engage it with violence. Frantz Fanon has also spoke about issues of violence as liberating. You also look at the post-colonial state. It was born out of direct confrontation with the colonial state. So without equivalent apparatus of engagement, then I think the romanticism might not be very useful. And the hashtags, of course.
Amazing. Now, as we come to the end of this amazing discussion that we've had, maybe I'll just allow you an opportunity to respond to him, then you can come to concluding remarks.
Yeah, I thank you very much. You see, from his last submissions, you can see that there is a serious marriage between ZANU-PF and the army. One which you alluded to say these guys were together in the trenches. And this has been the greatest challenge in terms of transformative politics in Zimbabwe, in the broad sense, because these guys have got a sense of entitlement to this country. And they would rather have the people suffering while just telling themselves it is ours. So they no longer care about the welfare of the Zimbabweans, but what they do care about is clinging on to power by all means necessary and unnecessary. That is where the gun comes in now, the unnecessary part, where they continuously hitting on the people. Then also to speak to the issue of the hashtags and whatnot. You see, we should be able to embrace the fourth industrial revolution, the media campaigns and everything that comes with it, in terms of us being able to communicate with each other. I'm sure someone is also listening to us as we speak because of the very same modus of media. And the government of today is very scared and runs scared of these campaigns. You might be saying it here. They have had to put people on the ground to go and deal with the cyber bill. They are very scared of these hashtags. Let me tell you, my brother. The government of the day has invested so much into cyber warriors called Warakash, but they are always at the mercy of Zimbabweans. Not necessarily people from the MDC, but Zimbabweans, they are always defeating them in terms of the social media, in trying to push the narrative. The government understands, ZANU-PF understands that these hashtags, they do work. And they've worked before. That's why they now have an over-control over portals. They will tell them, go and switch off the internet. Because they understand these hashtags have got an impact in terms of pushing agendas from the young people. You see, there are many countries where internet is being closed down because the state has understood that whenever there is communication over WhatsApp and everything, there's always, you have had demos that are being built on WhatsApp. If today, blessed, if you want to test, if I write a memo to say demo tomorrow at Africa Unit Square, then I sign with my name. Tomorrow, people won't be getting into town. You will hear people from Chamisa saying we can't cross the river. People from Highfield will tell you by Birmingham we are being sent back home because of the use of those issues. You say, I'll just say hashtag Jakwan. Tomorrow, people won't be able to get into town. You might not be having all the staff complement here because the government understands. So my brother here might be speaking from a perspective where he doesn't understand what makes the other comrades scared in ZANU-PF. They are very scared of those spaces. That's why you find they even come into our inboxes threatening us because of the issues and things that we propagate on the social media. They understand and they know.
Before the panelists give us their concluding remarks, we are going to hear the voices of Yvonne Nsarurwa, who we spoke to early before this interview, and the people that we interviewed in the streets. These are their voices and these are their views. Take time to listen.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Yvonne Nsarurwa, and I'm the National Youth Chairperson for MDC Youth Assembly. Yeah, I do agree that in 2023, the elections are going to be decided by the youth. And I also have another opinion that as long as we don't have electoral reforms, we'll be just going to vote and we'll try as the youth to vote, but at the end of the day the result won't be in favor of us, because as it stands right here in Zimbabwe, as long as we don't have electoral reforms, we are just wasting our time. So as MDC youth, we are working on electoral reforms, and we are trying to revisit the NERA agreement, National Elections Reforms Agenda, which was launched by our late President, Dr. Mugabe, where we are fighting for the electoral reforms. And we are also mobilizing the youths, especially in rural areas, because we have seen that the youths who are in urban cities, they are able to go and register to vote. So we are targeting the rural vote from the youth. So that's what we are currently doing. And we are also working with students from various universities, various institutions, so that we can have a better vote in 2023. But our main agenda right now, we are working on electoral reforms. Like you saw on Constitution Amendment number 2, we as MDCT, we fought for that bill to pass, because we also wanted to incorporate more youths come 2023. As we have seen, 10 more youths were added, while from all the previous elections, there were no youths who were included. They were just including women, and they were leaving the youth. So we are fighting that come 2023, we will have a space where we will allow more youth to get in parliament, to get in council. And we are also working through various organizations to give youths support, so that they take leadership roles. It's our role as the youth to push for ourselves, because we are not leaders of tomorrow, we are leaders of today. As my president is always saying, that youth are leaders of today and not leaders of tomorrow. So we'll try by all means necessary as the youth to push for our voices to be heard.
Considering the fact that my youth, they consist of the larger part population in Zimbabwe, almost 65% or even above. That means that my youth do a bigger say when it comes to my elections are here. So kuvota kwa my youth zurauti ndo wanakwasa kuita come up with a bigger decision of the outcome of my election. That's the major thing. Then another fact that we should also consider, my youth, they are very active, and kana uri youth ndopa unenge uri pa level ya unenge uri very active, which means when you are talking to your parents, you can actually convince your parents kuti endai munovhotera bato rakadai so, kana kuti mukomana ngaapinde, ndo vanokwanisa kuva nemawedzi akaita sewayo, so they can easily connive the upper age. So they've got a bigger role when it comes to my elections are where.
My youth apa tinofana kuvhota kuti kuitirawo kuti tisi vanhu vari zvino izvezvi, my youth ndanofana kuvhotawo kuti kuitira kuti tione kuti nyika ingasimuka here, because my youth ndo akatobata nyika pari zvino. Ndo muonero wandinoitawo ino.
Tingoshuwira kuti tingovhotawo tionekwa namabasa, life ichingochinja tichikuendawo kumberi.
Mayuthi anofana kunge achizvimiririra semayuthi mumaelections, achipiwa mukana wawo ekuti akwanise kuonawo ma-development funds, tingatichi kubatsirwa ne-government semayuthi kuti wawe ne-development pa-life yawo. Tingati nekutsigira nyika yawo kuti ende kumberi, because mayuthi ndo ratingatira mangwana renyika. Saka vanofana kunge vachiwa vari empowered zvakanyanyisa mayuthi kuti nyika ikwanise kuenda kumberi. Ndoona kuti royo mayuthi anofana kuva futi ari in love with their country. Sekuti ingwe ma-election naye atetichienda nditi vanofana kunge vachifarira nyika yavo, because ma-election anoitika zvakawandisa. Saka mayuthi ariwo futi akawanda vari vanhu vechidiki, saka vanofanira kunge vachidzidziswa zvakanyanyisa futi kuti vazive kwatinenge tichienda nekwatinenge tichibva.
Youth ndo ane majority population in Zimbabwe, and the future of Zimbabwe belongs to the youth. So my youth anofanira kuvota. They should register to vote because the future of this country belongs to the youth, and ndo ane majority population in Zimbabwe.
My youth ndeyekuchinja hurumende iripo, and my youth ndeyekuti my youth ese inezvika ari kufarira kurecheresa kuvhota kuti tiite hurumende itsva.
I will allow you, to have your closing remarks, Richard. The young people and politics, where do we stand?
Like I said, the young people have always been a perennial pillar of deciding the political course of any state, Zimbabwe included. And what we need across the political divide is to have young people not being manipulated to feed into executive interests, but young people should be driven to use the ballot to meet immediate existential needs, the fight against poverty, access to resources, and ensuring that democracy is attained to the fullest. And that way, Zimbabwe may then come first before institutional loyalties. That is all we need.
Wamberai, your closing remarks.
I want to urge all young people to participate fully in anything that is a bearing upon their present and their future. And as we go towards plebiscite in 2023, we want to make sure that people understand that voter registration is an ongoing process. So the offices that are open, people must be patient enough to go there and register to vote, because many of them are scared of the gun, but they can be useful in the ballot. They must go and register to vote and participate, so that the 400,000 plus figure that did not vote in 2018 in Harare becomes part and parcel of the deciding vote. The difference between the ZEC figures of Emerson Mnangagwa and Chamisa are less than 300,000, but we have Harare votes, that of registered voters that did not participate, of over 400,000. That is a huge figure that should translate into transformative politics. We could be having a different discourse today because we did come out in our numbers. So young people must participate. Lack of their participation is deciding to keep ourselves in the current quagmire, and their participation definitely will bring change, and the change we want. We want to win Zimbabwe for change.
Zimbabwean young people, it is up to you to decide the path that this country should take. It is also up to you to take leadership spaces so that you do not continue to blame those who are older than us for taking us into spaces that we do not want. Most of the young people in this country, we have noticed, are spending most of their time taking drugs. You have Guka, Mtoriro, and Bronco. Instead of becoming engineers, instead of becoming deciders of the future of this country, Facebook was created by young people. The social media blogs that we so much spend our time and energy in were created by young people as solutions to industries of their own country. It is up to us as the people of Zimbabwe to create solutions for our own country instead of bickering and fighting each other in the street corners. Instead of being used as political weapons and condoms that are discarded after an election. It is time for the young people of Zimbabwe to take this space. We do not advocate for which political party you should vote for. We advocate for you to change your personal discourse, the discourse of the future of this country. This was the Free Talk in proud partnership with the Frederick Newman Foundation. Thanking my guests Richard and Wamberai for joining me in studio this evening, and to you for choosing us as your station of choice. I am Dara Blessed Mhlanga for Heart and Soul TV and radio. Until next time, thank you for joining us. This was the Free Talk, proudly brought to you in proud partnership with the Frederick Newman Foundation and Heart and Soul TV and radio. We believe that dialogue is the crux of development. When people talk to each other, when people listen to each other, development happens. On Free Talk, we believe in political dialogue, economic dialogue, and social dialogue. Everybody must be heard. Everybody has a right to be heard. Free Talk, talking that moves nation. Free Talk, talking that makes a difference. This is the Free Talk.
Chuna eka sa tanyi